Welcome, Request Wanderers. This is Robert here with one update of the two things that I wish PoE improves with the upcoming league or upcoming leaks. After my frustratious exit of Delirium about the performance, as you recall from my last videos, I started playing Power Siphon and was pretty underwhelmed by how my PC performed, even though it was fine the last league. And I switched back to the character I played the league before, which was Caustic Arrow Trickster. And although the character is amazing, I just couldn't stand the constant stuttering and freezes and random crashes I had, which just were not there in 3.9. So I eventually stopped playing PoE and switched back to Borderlands. But now with the new league around the corner, I wanted to give it another shot. And yes, performance is still atrocious, at least for me. And I tried to figure out if it's like anything to do with my rig or whatever. I tested it against like other games, similar games, so also ARPGs with an online mode. And for some weird reason, only PoE seems to be the one that has both latency and FPS issues no matter what settings I try. So I actually already lowered the in-game settings to medium. I used to run everything on ultra, then I set everything down to high. Now it's on medium and it's still pretty meh. So when no mobs are around, it's around 120 FPS. But as soon as mobs get into play, you can see how it dips down into the 70s, which you might think seems to be okay, and you don't see the stuttering because this is a recording of a recording and it gets transcoded by YouTube, so it overall you won't see the difference, but just pay attention to the graph, the FPS graph that you've just seen. So it starts off with 120 and then just randomly as soon as you hit mobs, it seems to dip down into the 40s sometimes even, so you have those break-ins. Then the other day I switched to standard because I wanted to try something out, and I was weirdly surprised that the frame rate on standard seems to be more stable. So this is the character I played the previous league, which is exactly the same. It's also Caustic Arrow Trickster. It has the same items, it has the same buffs. And yes, you can also see the frame rate dips here, but one thing that is noticeable is that the frame rate dips on standard are they are not that how should I say, they don't dip so hard. So they do dip and the graph scales and it's a little bit hard to see, but they dip between 120, 100 and maybe they go down to 80, but not lower. While and on Delirium, even without interacting with the Delirium mirror, they dip into the 40s and 30s and sometimes even lower. So I don't know exactly what's happening there, other than the sneezing in the background. But right now, standard has better performance. Now, I don't know what the reasons for this could be. I am using different MTXs, so that could be the reason. Maybe one MTX on one character is more resource hungry than the other MTX. Maybe the monster composition, because I have Einhar in the Delirium instance, it's more resource hungry than having no Einhar. I have no idea. But it's just every time I log into Delirium, I get crazy stutters. Every time I log into standard, the gameplay is really, really smooth. So I'm not sure what's up with that. So that's number one. That's the first thing that I wish improves with the upcoming leaks is the performance. Another thing that I noticed, like especially if we switch back to, no, this is the wrong tab, to this little game here, which you probably all remember, which is, yeah, don't hate me, but I did try Diablo for a while, just to see if what my machine does, and sure enough, I mean, it's unfair comparison because it's a completely different engine, but here also the FPS meter can just work completely differently, so the dips aren't noticeable. But matter of fact is that I've never had any frame rate or latency issues in Diablo. So I also tried that at the same time of the day. I would run Diablo Rift and then shut down the game, open up Path of Exile and run a PoE map or just run Blood Aqueducts. And latency in Diablo was always fine, was always around 40 milliseconds. In PoE, it jumps between 40 milliseconds and 200, and then randomly my character just doesn't react and then dies because, it doesn't accept input. So another thing that I wish that PoE improves a little bit is the handling of picking up items. So what do I mean by that? I noticed one thing when I was playing Diablo 3 is that looting felt really, really good. And no, that has nothing to do with the automatic gold pickup. And no, I do not want gold or currency items in PoE to be picked up automatically. What I'm talking about is just the act of looting items. So we have one example over here, I think it is. One of those mobs drops a shield. And I just pick it up and I continue combat. And that in PoE never worked for me. And I only really realized that I have a problem with this after I played a little bit of D3. And then in the end of this Rift thing, I did a test. So I collected random items just for making this test to simulate like what like a boss drop or like a mob drop would look like in PoE on a strict filter, and then try to loot this stuff. Like imagine that this is his currency and count the number of misclicks. So I misclicked exactly like 3 times here or whatever. Then I did the same test in PoE. So there's another window for that. So also here, I dropped down some items on the ground, poured it away, and then I tried to pick them up. Count the misclicks. Can you see what's wrong with this? I don't know why this feels so weird. Yes, my character in PoE has more movement speed, but I'm targeting the items. The cursor size is the same. The highlighting click box is the same. So at first I thought that games like D3, they have a much looser hitbox. So you have to actually not be too close to the text to actually be able to highlight it, but it's not true. The item actually only gets highlighted once you reach the text, or you highlight the item itself. And that's exactly the same as it is in PoE. In PoE, you also have to hover directly over the item if you want to pick it up, which is completely fine. But for some reason, and I think this is related to how large the pickup radius is. So remember, I dropped all of this at the same place, but still my character is moving like crazy by trying to pick up these items, because I think in PoE, the character is trying to move to the item labels as opposed to the items themselves. And that's different in games like Diablo. In Diablo, for example, the final test I made is I wanted to get close to them and then pick them all up. And I'm standing here, and I can pick them all up without moving much. So the character does take a step towards the items, but it's not a huge step. Which means in games like Diablo, the pickup radius is not crazy big, but it is big enough to feel comfortable. And I think this is just something, especially with PoE, after characters are getting faster and faster. Maybe that's also the problem. Maybe the characters just need to be slower. That picking up items is just not fun anymore. Now you could also say, yeah, Robert, why do you have your item labels so small? Just use NeverThings filter. And yeah, joke's on you. This is NeverThings filter. I just changed the colors and the text to match the PoE theme. And I did that because I was annoyed by the massive text. NeverThink made every item be like font size 42 or whatever, because it is so hard to fucking pick those items up. But what's the point then? Because if you have a massive loot explosion, what this game is all about, then you can't see any gameplay anymore, because the entire screen is just full with colorful text. And this is like, I don't know. It's like these tiny little things that, in my opinion, have a big impact on how enjoyable a game feels, and I wish that GGG picks them up. I'm faithful, especially with PoE2, that a lot of this changes for the better, but let's hope this comes a little bit sooner as well. That's my rant. My name's Robert, and I hope to see you in game.